Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Josh Pate, the one and only. Not a lot of haters, all the homies, I think. Yeah, we can say that.
Can
Mr.
you?
Paul
Because
Wall.
if you want me to pull up my inbox, I got haters for you. I've got
Eh,
several of them. I'll send you some screenshots. You decide what you want to do with them. How about that?
okay, that's fair. I'm going to say you have no haters. No legitimate haters. Those are all bots. Those
Oh,
those
I
don't
didn't know
actually
it was
count.
legitimate. Of course, those
Yeah.
people aren't legitimate. I mean, um, you just if anybody has criticism of you, you remove them from your life, even if it's valid, and they are no longer a legitimate person. That's how that works.
The mute button is the best thing that Twitter's ever done. Not the
Oh,
block button, the mute button. It's the
yes.
best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you can still remain friends with someone. They don't even know that anything has come between you. Of course, you do that a lot for politics. Your buddy who you grew up with and who's working at the restaurant downtown becomes a political commentator. Mute.
I
Like,
look,
buddy, we grew up in the same sandbox, okay? I know you, and you know me, and you know that I know you. Mute. 30-day mute.
I muted some of my favorite people in this world.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And here's what's even, I would say, equally. It's more than equal. It's above and beyond crazy. More than often, these are people who you've hung out with before, and if you go to lunch with that person, none of the stuff that they post, none of the rambling, incoherent nonsense they post is going to come up in real conversation. They're
True.
still the same person you've always known, which begs the question, what happens to you when it's 11:30 at night and it's just you and a screen in front of you and a keyboard? Like, what happens? Come back down, like pulling a hot air balloon back to earth. Come back down here with the rest of us. Cindy.
It's always Cindy. Why is
It's
it always
always
Cindy?
Cindy's. I mean, no offense. I know there are good Cindy's around here, but people are sullying the good name of Cindy.
Okay, so since we last talked, you've gotten married. Congratulations, by the
Thank
way,
you.
on that. Has married life turned you into a softer guy or a different college football brain? Because I warned people before we had our daughter. I said, "Look, I'm going to get out all these takes that are kind of aggressive, these
Yeah.
critical takes before this happens, just because I don't know what it's like on the other side, and I might come out, a softie for everything, and everything's making me emotional. I don't want to criticize anything." Has that impacted your college football brain?
I don't know yet. I think the first sure test of that may be the media days circuit. And then preseason, I mean, here's what you got to find out. In preseason, when you talk about team strengths, anybody can do that. When it comes time to talk weaknesses, are you ready to question the mental fortitude of a 19-year-old left guard in the Big Ten? Are you ready to, or do you realize, man, that guy has parents who may be watching the show. I can't do that to him. Um, to be honest with you, I like to think I know the direction I'll go. I don't know for sure. I will say, don't you think there may be a little bit difference between just getting married versus getting married and then having kids? Because I think having kids is that's really the edge of the cliff. And you walk up to it and you either stare it in the face and then walk back or you jump.
You're right. Getting married, I guess, come to think of it, didn't change my perspective as much. But I don't know, man. Like, there is just something to be said for those big life changes. And I definitely had a moment afterwards. I was like, I'm a dad now. Do I want to criticize this guy even though his PFF grade is in the 30s? Like, can I sit here and do that? Like, that's not fair.
You remember? I'm not asking you if you remember this. Everyone remembers the TCU Georgia splattering a couple of years ago in the national championship game, and I remember normally like I stay on the field for those games, but that wasn't a game. So I went up to the press box and I was talking to some folks. That's national title game. That's the last time we're going to see each other for several months, probably. So, you're saying your goodbyes and everything, and everyone's joking about what's happening to TCU. And I remember hearing someone say, man, come on now. Those are someone's kids. And I remember looking down on that person with such disdain. Like, these aren't real people. These are football players. This is no different than playing the video game. They don't have hearts and souls. We're supposed to be able to talk about them any way we please. And now I think back, and that was only like 3 years ago. And I think back and like that unnamed member of the esteemed college football press may not have been totally wrong. Still, though, shame on TCU. Well, shame on Kirby Smart, actually, but they may not have been totally wrong.
Georgia players eating chicken wings on the sidelines was way more
Oh,
disrespectful than whatever that media member said.
oh, especially after we predicted them to go 7-5. That was the worst part. We all thought they'd go 7-5 that year, I'm told.
Look, Nolan Smith said on this show, like that was his confession on this very show. I made that all up. I just ran with it. It sounded like the
Yes.
perfect number.
Yes. I can't believe that. I
Yeah.
can't believe that doesn't sound like the Georgia I know, but who knows? Maybe.
Okay, so this I promised you one question that you haven't gotten
All
this
right.
offseason, and I think this is it. If you had to be married to one college football program for the rest of the time that their head coach is employed, till death do you part, who would it be? Because I think that question is more interesting now than maybe it was probably at any point in the 2020s or even the 2010s with Saban.
Yeah. Unequivocally, the answer is Arizona State and Kenny Dillingham.
Ooh.
Unequivocally. And I don't know, you probably haven't spent a lot of time around Arizona State, but I'm just telling you, if you walk around there and you know the recent history of that place, they're supposed to be dead. It's like watching The Undertaker when you're a kid and you just saw him get buried alive on pay-per-view the night before, and there he is walking down the ramp, and you just think to yourself, wait, Dad, Mom, he died. I thought he was dead. Arizona State, latter portion of the Herm Edwards regime and all the sanctions. You remember how we were talking about them? I was talking about them as a program that was in the best of times going to struggle to compete. But with all that, not thrown in their lap, like thrown on top of their head, that was like dirt being shoveled on top of them. And so then they go get Kenny Dillingham, who no one's forecasting to be a head coach anytime soon, and they go get him because he grew up in their backyard and he's a big Sun Devil and he comes home, and it was perceived as, all right, you got the hometown guy, he'll hold the rope through the dark days, and then once you get out of that, then you'll be able to 5, 7, 10 years down the road sort of hope to re-elevate. And Kenny said, wait, what? We're supposed to what? It was almost like he didn't even know what reality was. And then he took his personality, he put it in a giant syringe, he injected it into the entire place, and it worked, which is a beautiful thing when that happens, especially when it's a guy who knows the program, who loves the program. That's why I wish Orgeron would have worked out long term at LSU, because that was that kind of unique fit. I think Shane Beamer at South Carolina feels that way. So I think Kenny Dillingham, as long as he's at Arizona State, they're not winning the Big 12 every year, but I fully believe, like I will commit as an outsider to the way they go about doing things as long as he's there. I know that's a really random one, but having been around them and having understood what they were and what they are, totally believe in what they do at Arizona State.
I love that answer. It's a really, really good answer because if you know the story and the trajectory of what they've been the last 5 years, you're right. It is absolutely amazing to see them already at this level. Similar thought. We'll keep it to this year, though. Who's your favorite player in college football this year? Like the guy that even when you're on the sidelines in College Station or Eugene or something like that, you're on your phone and you're not playing solitaire like Stephen A, but you're actually watching him play football. Like who's that guy for you?
Um, I am a big Caden Proctor fan at Alabama.
Mm.
I like Drew Aller at Penn State. Um, I don't really know DJ Lagway that well. Like those other two guys I know. I don't know DJ Lagway that well, but I just look forward to watching him play. Um, I look forward to what Cade Klubnik has the opportunity to do, and that's much bigger than just himself, like his personal performance. I'm just trying to think. I mean, there are a lot of, you could just go through the preseason All American team and talk about good players, but I'm trying to think about ones that have that unique angle about them. I mean, Jeremiah Love at Notre Dame is one of them, and to a certain extent, Reuben Owens at Texas A&M. I
That's a
feel the
good
same
answer.
way about, only because those guys could help teams win games in a way that not too long ago a lot of people thought wouldn't be able to win anymore. You know, we're only a few years removed from the period of time where everyone was telling you, oh, the running back position is totally devalued at college and NFL levels, and everybody's got to score 50 to win, and your offense, if it doesn't look like a pinball machine, it's an afterthought, like it's dead and buried and whatnot. So those were a few. I don't know, who are yours? I'm probably going to
Aaron
think of
Anderson.
five.
Yeah, Aaron
Okay.
Anderson is the one that I really like at LSU. That's the first one that I come up with. Ruben Owens was on my all bang the drum team this year at Texas A&M, just because I think people in College Station are so excited about just the fact that he returned late
Yeah.
last season, and now the Le'Veon Moss injury kind of puts him into a more prominent role. Mari Daniel's still going to have work there. Those are two guys that I come back to, like a Bray Hubbard at Alabama is one of those guys. It's almost, I feel like it's almost unfair to include quarterbacks because obviously we're all excited about Lagway. We're all excited about Arch, even
Yep.
Klubnik, like the player that he's become. Those guys, even Lenora Sellers has been must see TV. But I kind of like getting into those other guys of what it's going to look like. Jordan Tyson, what's you talk about Arizona State? Like, what's he going to look like coming off of injury last year? And a guy that could be maybe the best returning receiver, not named Jeremiah Smith or Ryan Williams, obviously. So those are kind of more obvious names, but there's a lot I feel like this year in college football, and it's there's really no right answer to that.
Yeah. So extending off of that for a second, this is kind of reminds me of what you just said. Reminds me of something. So there's a perception amongst people who you may be like 47 years old, you work a 9 to 5 job, you have a wife, kids, but your social circle and your life does not regularly bring you in contact with 18 to 22-year-olds. That's a normal 47-year-old's existence.
Fair.
So, like, if I didn't do what I did for a living, I would not regularly come into contact with 18 to 22-year-olds, maybe at the gym, but that would be it. But because I do what I do for a living, I'm around them the entire year. There is a perception out there that I always try and dispel whenever I can, that your 18 to 22-year-old crowd, like, just morally there's been a sharp decline and there's zero attention span and they're all about this and they're not about that. And I got to tell you something. I get where that comes from. Like, I understand where that theory comes from, where that stereotype comes from. I wish I could take people collectively just on field trips with me. You would be staggered. Like, you would be stunned at how opposite those players are compared to what you think they're like. Because what you find is you're always going to have deadbeats in society. You're always going to have losers. You're always going to have bad apples. But what you find is you've got, so on a college football roster now, they're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. They are the first generation that has grown up entirely in the social media age. They were immersed in it from the time they were born. There was no other world. What's happened is, yeah, there's been some brain rot on certain edges of society, but those kids have known for quite a while they got pretty high upside. Like, they could go on to play college football, be in the NFL, make life-changing money because athletically they've just been God-gifted the abilities. And what they've learned through constant knowledge that you're being observed and everyone's got a phone at all times, they had to sharpen their awareness skills at such a younger age than you did and I did and anyone older than us did, that it's the opposite. It's like being around 40-year-old people mentally, but they're all 19 and 20. And they're so much more aware. They talk way differently than a 19 or 20-year-old would have talked any previous generation. In my theory, I talk to coaches about this all the time. Hardly any of them ever have players arrested anymore. Hardly any of them ever have players in trouble anymore. It's like the disciplinary stuff's just fallen off a cliff. And it's because this entire generation has been made to be aware that someone is watching them at all times. And they've just realized, I'd rather stay in and play video games. Now, I think there are downsides to that. Like, socially, does that develop you as much as you would have previous generations? But I don't know how we got down that rabbit hole, but I just wanted to make sure people understood there are a lot of theories you can develop from, watching the colorful end zone celebrations and looking at the anecdotal headlines every now and then. Dude, the world is so radically different when you're around those players than you're led to believe if you're never around them.
So we'll get that on a graphic. Who is Josh Pate's favorite player? And we'll just say this entire generation. Just
Every
cover.
every every kid, every kid.
Love
And
it.
then we'll have some caveats at the bottom, except for these two or three.
That's true.
Yeah.
By the way, Haynes King should have included Haynes King, favorite players in
Well,
college football.
he's the quarterback of the sleeper contender for the playoff in America this year, as we know.
I like that. I like that take a lot. You went everywhere this spring. It doesn't have to be biggest takeaway, but what's something that you learned or picked up on during those visits that you've just been kind of thinking about this summer?
Always loved talking to Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart is the most brutally honest guy on and off the record that I encounter. Ryan Day is that way too. And I guess it's no coincidence those two are near or at the top of their profession. And so I think a lot's even changed since I talked to those guys a couple of months ago. Like since then, we've had the house settlement. When I talked to him, it was, all right, if we get this, then that. Well, they've got it now. And the hope amongst a lot of these places, I'd say 95% of the coaches I talked to, the hope was that house settlement passes and everything does get reined in, and they would love to go back to a world that feels more like traditional recruiting felt, where no one was ever ignorant enough to think money didn't change hands. But the money changing hands was all comparable. It wasn't like we've had it the past couple of years, where if O'Gara U offers me $210,000 and then Pate State comes in and offers me 1.1 million because I happen to have a billionaire booster on my payroll. Well, that doesn't matter if you're the best at developing that kid. They're coming with me because they can't turn that money down. No one would expect them to. That takes relationships out of recruiting. That takes the allure of the official visit and making sure you're a good fit and recruiting the entire family and developing that bond. And the developmental piece and proven production at your position and why you should play here over there, that used to be recruiting. That was all gone. It was just a bidding war. And people will tell you it was always that way. Well, BS. You don't know what you're talking about. It wasn't always that way. So that was one theme. Like almost all of them were hoping we could get back to that. And then the other kind of takeaways, I think Steve Sarkisian is the smartest guy that you will talk to. Steve Sarkisian, dude, if you just sit there, you just shut up and listen to him talk, you just kind of toss him, not a softball question, but just lob something to him. He is a guy who always has a 5-layer deep response. And it's not just here's what we do, the why. Like Steve Sarkisian's whys on any of a number of things are so meticulously well thought out. And it's just, I listen to people like him. And this is going to sound like, Texas propaganda. It's more Steve Sarkisian propaganda. I listen to him. And I sometimes think, is that kind of intelligence wasted on just being a football coach? Now, football is the center of my universe, so I hope he coaches football forever. But I listen to people like Steve Sarkisian. And then I listen to the relative incompetence that exists in many other sectors of society. And I say, might Steve Sarkisian be needed elsewhere? They used to say that about Saban all the time. Are we wasting Nick Saban's wisdom and acumen on just being a football coach? Now, they say that pejoratively about football. Again, you and I love that they're football coaches. But there's a sharp head coach in Austin. And then you think about the fact that he's kind of on top of the world with a ton to prove still. Marcus Freeman, kind of on top of the world with a ton to prove still. James Franklin, top of the world, ton to prove still. If you were born in 2015, you might be ignorant enough to say that about Dabo Swinney. He's got a ton to prove. He's on top of the world, but a ton to prove. So there are a lot of guys that you could describe like that. Top of the world, still a ton to prove.
Kirby Smart, top of the world, a ton to prove. What have you done
He
for me lately?
He hasn't won a title in 48 months, 60 months, whatever. Like, I don't even know what's wrong with it. In fact, what's wrong with the entire SEC? Once it's 3 years in a row, once something happens 3 times in a row, that's a streak. It has happened before, to quote Lou Brown in Major League. If we win today, that's called a winning streak. It has happened before. Well, the same applies on the other side.
I want to get your take on Auburn because I remember this time last year you were talking about how they're going to be playing a lot of freshmen. That's just reality. And if you just kind of look at the sum of the parts, you'd say, well, they went 1-5 in games that were decided by 10 or less. It was a team that struggled in the fourth quarter. That's kind of what it looks like when a team is playing through freshmen. I think you could point to other things that ultimately were they're undoing, most notably the decisions made by one Hugh Freeze. I think he's got the hottest seat in America. Maybe that's a controversial take. The recruiting lately has just been falling off a cliff. Make of that what you will. But how confident are you that Hugh Freeze navigates this? And by this time next year, we're talking about him in a much more positive light.
Not overly confident. Haven't bailed on him. Not overly confident, though. I mean, really, if you think about it, It all comes down to whether Jackson Arnold works out.
It's true.
Like that sounds very obvious, but what I mean by that is, all right, so Freeze's offense, even when it's clicking, is one of the more turnover prone offenses historically in college football. They're always going to have a higher turnover rate. They really did last year, but it didn't work last year. Even when it's working, even when he was clicking at Ole Miss, they turned the ball over. Jackson Arnold was a turnover machine last year. I'm supposed to just expect those two things to fuse and work. Maybe they will. I have no idea if it will. Maybe they will, but you cannot just think about that in isolation. Like, of course, that's what their hopes this season is tied to. But also, you cannot ignore the recruiting red flags right now. And to me, I mean, it is not 2006 anymore. You lock your signing class down in the summer. There is no let's go play the season, and then all these uncommitted kids will be watching the season, and then they'll decide to sign with us in January. They're already committed. So either you're going to get a lot of them to decommit, which I think they have to plan on doing anyway, or you're screwed. Well, Auburn, to make it work, period, they have to win this year. If they don't win this year, he's in big trouble. If they don't win this year, there's no way they have a signing class that's to the level that they need to have. And so I think it's like watching the seesaw and seeing it's teetering right now. You're just waiting. Like, does the stone get added on this side or this side? Well, the stone is quarterback play this year. It's not a guy that they recruited. It's not a guy they've developed. They are placing their careers in the hands of a portal quarterback. They're not the only ones that are forced to do that in this era, but this time last year, like, I was looking at what you were just talking about. Okay, they got a couple of really good signing classes baked in. They were given patience. You got to give Auburn folks credit. They were given patience because they knew Harsin left us next to nothing. This new staff's going to come in. Freeze has won in this conference before, so he's got the proof of performance. Let's give him some time. And they did give him time. And then they had the season they had last year. And you fast forward another year, I say the same thing about Venables at Oklahoma. You can talk about how crazy expectation level is. When you're 3-4 plus years into a job, you don't take these jobs without understanding that level of expectation is going to be there. And you don't take these jobs without understanding, if I'm not getting it done, if we're not humming by year 3 and year 4 especially, then I'll be out of a job. That's the trade-off to making the kind of money you make. That's the way it works. So I'm really I feel like I'm blindfolded, sort of balancing on a railroad beam right now. It could go either way, and I do not think there's a whole lot of skill in forecasting which way it'll go. I really don't.
Diego Pavia said on Bussin' with the Boys that Vandy will run Tennessee. Was that more or less accurate than him saying that he doesn't know who Josh Pate is?
I don't know who Diego Pavia is. I assume that's
That's
got to be a quarterback in this league. Maybe did some noteworthy things last year. Hold on. Wikipedia is telling me, okay, Vanderbilt starting quarterback. Oh, they beat Alabama last year. I remember that now. Okay.
Yep.
So, look, if you're going to call your shot there, and this is real talk now, I do know who he is. If you're going to call your shot, this is the year to call your shot against Tennessee. You're going to go into their building, okay, but it's going to be, I think, do they still play later in the year? Like, isn't that still last week of the season?
I think it's still last week of the season, yeah.
Okay, if Tennessee's good this year, they should beat you. But if they're off, and they could be, I think it'll be a rebuild year for Tennessee personally. If they are, and you get that deep in the season, then they've also dealt with injury. They may be limping to a 7-5, 8-4 type finish, and you're the difference between 7 versus 8 wins. That is your Super Bowl. Like, as much as they want to talk about their goals of the playoff over there, that's not Vandy. But beating Tennessee to cap a good season, that's their Super Bowl. This is the year. If you can leave, having been the quarterback that beat Alabama and then Tennessee, and before you transferred to Vandy, you took a bite out of Auburn by way of New Mexico State, you're already a legend, but that would make you in-state. That would make you a legend. So I respect what he's doing there. Like, he's running his mouth at the right time. And he's already proven that he can back it up. It's not a true freshman coming in that just doesn't know any better. So I'm still leaning Tennessee, but that game's like 5 years away at this point, so we'll see.
I actually think it's a positive when someone says they don't know you, because to me, that's the ultimate sign that they're locked in. That means they're truly not on the internet, because if you're on the internet, you see Josh Pate. Like, that's just reality. Also, if you're in a stadium and you
Oh,
hear the pregame hype video that's playing, that shows me that that guy is focused on just what they can control in their own world. They're not listening to the stadium, all the outside noise. That's as locked in as a player can be. Diego Pavia's stock way up after I heard that.
well, also, I mean, he's like 4 blocks from me. He's just right down the road. So apparently, I can't blame him for this because I don't get out either. Apparently, he doesn't get out and I don't get out, and we're just two little ships. We're not even passing in the night. We're not even leaving the harbor. That's the best compliment slash worst critique I could give each other.
Different gym too, different
Oh,
story there.
definitely, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. You've spent a lot of time campaigning for a position that's never going to exist, college football commissioner. If, let's say, this hypothetical world does exist and you get to your office, before you even sit down in that office chair, what's that first change that you're making going, we're going to fix that. I don't even need to get comfortable. Don't even give me the continental breakfast. I'm going to make this change and make that happen immediately.
Well, you got to do the Captain Phillips conversation with Greg Sankey and Tony Petiti. You got to full on. I'm the captain now to those guys, respectfully. I would love to completely tear to shreds every media rights deal that exists. Since this is hypothetical land and I can do whatever I want to, I hate, I detest when people look at college football and just talk about how it should emulate the NFL. But that doesn't mean there aren't some things the NFL does that we couldn't learn from. We just follow the NFL down the wrong road sometimes. But the right road would be what they do with media rights. It is utterly insane to have the media rights package exist the way it does right now, and especially the playoff package, letting one network buy the rights to the entire thing. Like, that's a dereliction of duty at the hands of stakeholders of college football. If I were ESPN, I'd do exactly what they've done. This is no shot at ESPN. This is me thinking to myself, how in the world, as the presidents of these universities, as commissioners, do you not understand the value in every network having a piece of your postseason like they do in the NFL? Because if every network has a piece of the postseason media rights package, then it behooves them to promote your sport hardcore year round instead of just understanding, well, we're filling the blank network here. Yeah, we got some regular season games, but beyond that, we cut the lights out the first week of December. That's terrible for the sport, not to even mention all the conspiracy theories it gives birth to about the playoff selection process, and the network that owns the media rights to the playoff also happens to be in bed with one conference. Like, there's just no reason for that to exist. And the only reason it does is because there's not oversight in college football. So I'd love to tackle that first and foremost, and then maybe dive further into the weeds of, all right, well, who should be playing how many conference games? And also, do you really have to have employment model to have collective bargaining? I don't know that you necessarily have to have that. I just think it's a working theory that you do have to have it. So a lot of stuff like that I would tackle. And that would be before lunch. And then after lunch, I don't know what we would do in the afternoon.
All depends on what you would have for lunch too.
Yeah.
That's going to really set the tone.
Probably a lot of team building exercises in the afternoon.
True. That was a good answer. The correct answer was actually a 1-year playoff ban for any coach that compares their quarterback to Cam Newton. That was what we were looking for, but that was good.
I thought that was already assumed. I'm going to have everyone breathe oxygen. You're going to drink water. And if you compare your QB to Cam Newton, you're out for 1 year. I would even argue repeat offenders have a lifetime ban.
Yes. And I don't care if you coached him, Gus Malzahn. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. All right, last one for you. Has the Big Ten overtaken the SEC as the new standard in the sport, or is it still too early to say that?
No, I still say it's the SEC. I think it just all depends on what your criteria is, though. Is the measure of a conference solely their ability to win a national championship? If that's it, then the Big Ten has overtaken the SEC. I think about the competitive depth of a conference in tiers 1 and 2, and even to a certain extent 3, as the better measure of that. And to that degree, not only would I still classify the SEC as the best conference in college football, there's little separation between the SEC and the Big Ten. All due respect to the Big Ten for trying to get their act together when it comes to tier two. Like, I think one of the biggest hidden stories up there has been Ohio State's always been good. They always will. Oregon will be good. Michigan will be good. Penn State will be good. Oregon will be good. Like, I think I said them twice. Those programs I can count on. To me, the big story in the Big Ten was, for a long time, Nebraska was just inexplicably bad. Wisconsin, ditto. Iowa hasn't been bad, but they've never leveled up. And there are programs, Michigan State, there are programs like that that should be every bit in your conference what, for instance, South Carolina or Tennessee is. It has been in the SEC. But they just didn't take it seriously enough. And as you'll notice, a few years ago when that new media rights money kicked in, there was this sort of kick in the pants for a lot of those programs of, we're not just paying you this money to broadcast 3 or 4 teams. So you guys better get your act together. And it's no coincidence that Wisconsin went and got Fickle. Now, that hadn't worked out yet, but they went and got Fickle the same time that Matt Rule was grabbed up by Nebraska, and then Michigan State got really aggressive going to get Smith. Now, does it all pay off? We don't know. But at the very least, they've gotten aggressive. Those second-tier teams have gotten aggressive. That's how you close the gap. Like, they're always going to be top contenders in those conferences on both sides of the coin. Your second tier, to me, that's what still separates maybe the SEC a little bit from the Big Ten.
Even just having media days in Vegas is a sign that the Big Ten is taking things more seriously from the the conversation standpoint and all that as well. Which look, I'm sure you'll be doing the media days tour. I'll see you in Atlanta in a couple of weeks. Looking forward to it. And wish you the best of luck on everything. And let's just say I hope that you don't change who you are just as a result of getting married.
If I plan on changing, you'll be the first to know. I agree with you. Sentiment shared. But, cross my heart, hope to live. Let's hope that you recognize me this time a couple of months from now.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it, brother.